synthesis in which my hair is wild, but we are talking about a book I read for work. It's a classic, in a way. The adult dystopian literature, and The Giver, and I will be discussing it with my students. And I thought I would talk about it here because I really enjoyed the book. It's been, man, 2 decades, maybe, something like that, 20 years since I read the book, I think. I read it when I was quite young, and I never read it again because it horrified me. In the event that you have not read The Giver, or it's been a long time, it is set in a community run by a committee that assigns everything and has strict regimented rules for everyone. For example, they will choose your spouse. They will choose your kids for you because you aren't allowed to make choices in many ways. You choose your spouse, they will choose the kids for you. You don't have your own children. You apply for them. And the committee will also assign you a job. And some of those jobs could be doctors, or law and justice, a lawyer, nurturer to take care of babies, or a caretaker for the elderly, or labor, or storyteller, which seems like it doesn't happen very often. The main character is selected, not assigned, but selected to be the next receiver, who is the holder of memories. Now, there's another job that you can be assigned only if you're a woman or a girl, and that is birth mother. I'm just going to say this. This is something that I didn't recognize as horrifying about it. There are a couple elements that are disturbing, but at 12, you become an adult in this world. And at 12, some people have chosen to be birth mothers, to be having kids for the next 3 years, and then work hard manual labor. I'm going to let that stew in your mind a little bit, because it's disturbing and we don't need to talk about it. But anyway, those kids will be taken away from their birth mothers and assigned to some parent. Anyway, some children and some people who cause some trouble, and also the elderly, are released, and there's a big ceremony about being released to elsewhere, being who knows where, because nobody knows, because nobody has any of this information. It's kind of rude to ask these kind of questions. And everyone wears the same kind of tunic, and there's this idea of sameness. Everyone should be on the same page to have a kind of harmonious society, I suppose. Jonas, our main character, is selected to be the next receiver, and the receiver is the person that holds all the memories. And the reason they hold all the memories is so that nobody else has to, because some of these memories, well, they can be pleasurable, enjoyable, or warm in some way. There are also many memories that cause a lot of pain. So in this case, this community has decided to bestow all this responsibility and pain on one person for the betterment of everybody else, because everyone is provided for, everyone has a job, everyone can take care of themselves. No one does without in any way. But there are some extreme sacrifices that must be made to have this world. Perhaps some overcorrections on trying to fix the ills of society. Like I said, one person holds all memories and feels all the pain, and is not allowed to tell anybody except the new receiver and trainer about any of the emotions. Because, first of all, they won't understand them, because whenever anybody has any kind of emotion, they are given a drug. They have a stirring, as it's called, and they will be given a drug to, and they will have to do the dream telling to discuss it. Maybe they'll have to go to the committee. It's kind of like Brave New World, just takes in Selma in that case, but a little toned down. Um, Jonas is the new receiver, and the giver is the old receiver, who gives him all kinds of memories, starting with memories of snow, going down the hill, on the sledge, and other pleasant memories like being on a sailboat, blue sea, and also some bad memories. Some memories of hunger, war, of bravery, which is not a bad thing necessarily. But yeah, they need him to train to be the next receiver because this receiver is quite old, and the last receiver they had was released by request because she, the daughter of the old receiver, Rosemary, she had trained for 5 weeks and could not handle the feelings that she was experiencing for the first time. Because there's all kinds of horrible things in this, or seemingly horrible things. She asks to be released because she can't comprehend these emotions because she's never had to work through them before. And so when she's released, which means to be euthanized, all of her memories go into and sort of dissipate into the rest of the community, and everyone doesn't know what to do with the emotions, and it causes quite a stir. They go to the receiver to figure out what to do because he holds all the memories so that in the event that something unexpected happens, he can use his wisdom and understanding of the pain and suffering of the past to make a decision on what to do in the future. And they need to get a new one because the receiver is quite old and he holds all the memories, so they need to keep this process going. There are new rules. Receivers can no longer ask to be released because that's a big problem. The last time they asked, and they don't ask very often because not a lot of unexpected things happen because there's so much in the way of strict governance in this case. At the beginning of the book, there was a pilot that flies too close, too low to the town, and everybody is freaking out. And they don't know what to do because they've never experienced this before. The plan that the committee is to destroy the planet, and the pilot, the giver, who cannot tell them why he thinks they shouldn't do that, tells them not to. He is religious as he is insane, but they don't destroy the plane because that would give people emotions, something to remember, something to experience and not understand, and they don't know how to process it because they don't have emotions. There are some interesting elements to this book that I will enjoy discussing with my students. For example, this is at the beginning of the book, it feels like a utopian for the character, the main character, Jonas. He doesn't question anything that he has in his life. He's quite happy and quite content. And in a way, from a certain point of view, it is kind of a utopia. I mean, everyone is provided for and taken care of and all this other stuff, so that's great. Comes at the cost of euthanizing children, just because we have population control. We also have thought control. We can't have anybody wearing anything but the same colors. Everyone is bred to have color blindness and precision of language. They have to use exact same words. They're drugged if they have too strong feelings, released if they cause problems. And when they're parents, they don't need to have their own kids, but they are given children after application, only two, which is, maybe these two are not so bad. but there is this population control element to it that gets very strange because once the kids are grown up, the parents will move to the childless adults part of the community and never see their kids again. And when they can no longer work, they will take them to the old people's home, which I forgot the name of it, and then they will be released. And their kids will, I have completely forgotten. There is this memory that Jonas gets about, I think it's Christmas. It seems like it might be Hanukkah, but I think it's Christmas. And he sees grandparents with their kids and their grandkids enjoying themselves and having a good time. And he doesn't understand the feeling of love or this warmth that he's experiencing. And he thinks it's very strange. He doesn't understand the concept of grandparents or like biological parents and biological children. And it makes you wonder. Things are a little bit different here in China than they are in America. Makes you wonder, how do we treat our elderly? Push them off to the side? Seems to be what the book is saying. That we actually do. We could have this great memory independence. Anyway, also, how far is too far when trying to correct these problems in the world or in our society that we have. There are many other questions. I suppose of work and children working. When is a kid an adult? Certainly not 12. That's just disturbing. There's also this element. Jonas gets a memory of war. And later he sees his friends playing with them and enjoying himself. And he has this like PTSD kind of flashback thing, and he's trying to explain to his friend what the situation is, and his friend apologizes. Jonas says, no, you don't understand. He's trying to explain this memory and how this sort of play war game is reminiscent of much more horrifying things, and Asher doesn't want to hear any of it. I already apologize. Maybe these things that we do to distract ourselves, what implications do those games have? Maybe we could talk about that. Also, when I think I will pose this question to my students. I don't know how I'm going to say it exactly. I've got a couple of minutes to figure it out. When you have someone who doesn't have any empathy, can't feel emotions, like the whole of this community, none of them are perturbed by releasing. They also don't know what it is, but people that do it are not disturbed by it. But when you have an individual in society, possibly can cause some trouble. That doesn't feel emotions. Maybe it's kind of sociopath, psychopath, or something. It doesn't have to be so extreme as murder necessarily, but from what I understand, it's possible that these people are more likely to cause harm to others to get what they want. So, if the whole, maybe not, the whole social structure, system, society is like that, doesn't feel anything, doesn't feel emotions, doesn't know how to process emotions in that kind of way, including yourself. Jonas is an exception because he's got the ability to see beyond, which is why he's chosen as a receiver. It's a little hard because you have to really remove yourself, but does that make these things easier to process? I guess it would make it easier to process, but does that change what we can consider wrong? Are these people wrong? Is the committee wrong? Just something to make them think about, because I already know that they're going to be like, no, these guys are terrible. but you know, just it's an interesting book. There's a lot of things that I think will be interesting to talk about with my students. The terraforming, the thought control, the, the selective breeding, utopian, dystopian element, the ceremony release, um, what we can consider acceptable based on social customs, I guess, especially if we have been made to not feel anything for other people. Why would we be made not to feel it? Sure, they're going to see that that is wrong, but are there any benefits? Why did we do this? Why did we that? You know, I don't remember. There was another thing I wanted to say, but I just read it recently, and I took a whole bunch of notes. I need to organize my thoughts so that I can actually come up with a coherent handful of classes that we will be covering some more than that. But I've got to organize my ideas a little bit more. But for the review, I feel like it's fine. Lots of interesting things to talk about. Let me know what you think about the book. I'm curious to know what thoughts you have. And maybe it's a couple weeks time I have to actually I got a head start before I actually have to present some things to my students. And, maybe we can bounce ideas off each other. I don't know. Thank you. That's all I have to say. It's a great book. Please